Sabrina, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. It's so great to be here with you and everyone today. Thanks for having me.
You're joining us from New York, the East Coast, right?
Yes, the beautiful North Shore of Long Island. Yes.
We're excited to have you, and let's get started.
Okay.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's event. You can't fake authentic leadership. My name is Leo Bagdasarian, and I'm the managing director of the AIER's Bastiat Society of San Francisco. The American Institute for Economic Research was founded in 1933 and is one of the oldest nonpartisan economic research and advocacy organizations in the country. Through the Bastiat Society program, AIER makes the ideas that enable peaceful trade and human flourishing available to a wider audience. Our guest today is Sabrina Horn, an award-winning CEO, C-suite advisor, communications expert, speaker, and author. For over a quarter century, Sabrina has advised thousands of executives and their companies, from the hottest startups to the Fortune 500. She has written for the Wall Street Journal, Inc., Entrepreneur, and Forbes, and is a frequent speaker at leadership conferences. Sabrina holds a master's in public relations from Boston University. Her new book, Make It, Don't Fake It, Leading with Authenticity for Real Business Success, came out this week. Actually came out Tuesday. And it's a must read and I have it in the back right here.
Yeah.
And it's a must read for aspiring and seasoned leaders alike. Sabrina condenses her experience into a small, compact book where she revisits the core of leadership, defines authentic, reality-based business integrity, and shows how to attain and maintain integrity and success. And Make It, Don't Fake It, Sabrina lays out the workable strategies, frameworks, and mental maps to help leaders gain the clarity of thought necessary to make sound business decisions, even when there is no right answer. From her straightforward, no-nonsense style, our guest shares the power of humility and empathy, mentorship and self-assessment, and a strong core value system to build a leader's confidence and resilience. Sabrina's fake-free advice will empower you, the reader, to disarm fear and organize risk, to manage setbacks and crises, deal with losing and loneliness, and create a culture and brand designed for long-term success. You can find the book in any major bookstore, including Target, Amazon, and Barnes & Noble. Now, before we begin, I just want to make one final note. There will be time for Q&A at the end. If a question does come to mind, just feel free to message it to me or use that little toggle on the bottom to submit your questions. Sabrina, thank you for joining us.
Thank
I
you.
want to start off by asking, why did you write the book, and what was the inspiration for the title?
Yeah, so that's a great place to start. I will start by saying I'm the only child of German immigrants. And I think their entrepreneurial spirit and their survival instincts infused in me the notion that maybe someday I could start my own firm, which I did when I was 29 in the early 1990s. I started a PR agency in the tech industry. And I had about 4 years of experience, no leadership training. And I had a bright idea and a PC revolution market on my, the wind in my sail, and had a client in my back pocket. And so I was in business. But along the way in Silicon Valley in PR, I certainly saw quite a bit of fakery but also a lot of excellent leadership. I made tons of mistakes as a young, inexperienced CEO. And now if you fast forward to the last 10 years, I feel like a lot of people have forgotten about the fact that integrity matters. And the fake it till you make it mantra, which has become so popular in the last 10 years, really, I think has fueled that and accelerated this notion that somehow you have to fake it in order to be successful, and that integrity is optional. And this is just the worst business advice ever. Because if you exaggerate the truth or distort the facts and you're exposed, you'll set yourself back and like sabotage your success. So in fact, faking it doesn't help you make it at all. It helps you fail. And I wanted to write a book where I could bring the stories of my crazy career in Silicon Valley to light, to show how other entrepreneurs and executives can achieve long-term business success by going back to a core sense of integrity. Uh, and the title, um, I just flipped it on its head. You know, it's not fake it till you make it. It's make it. Don't fake it. So yeah, and it came out on Tuesday.
In the book, you create wonderful graphics to help readers walk through these concepts. And in the note of integrity, when I read through the book, there was a consistency of reality, ideas, and beliefs, and you bring that to life through your experiences. One of the graphics that you use is what's called the Fecal Meter.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
uh, and what are the different forms of faking it?
Yeah.
Why is, I mean, you covered why is it bad advice, but if you could tell us a little bit about that Fecal Meter.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I was thinking about all the different ways that people can fake it, right, I had to put it in buckets, because there's some ways of faking it that are innocent. And then there's others on the other end of the spectrum that are way off the charts. And the fakeometer starts off with acting as if. So this is actually something that is used in cognitive behavioral therapy and was created by a psychotherapist named Adler in the 1920s. And it really is just simply that you practice the behaviors you want to exude, until you practice them so much that it becomes a habit, and you become them. And this is really just a form of self-help. There's nothing wrong with it. But you start to fake it and cross the line when you do things and say things that are at the expense of others for personal gain. So exaggerating the truth, say you're an entrepreneur and you kind of stretch the truth a little bit in your investor deck to get the VC money, or you're a salesperson and you overpromise what your product can do to a customer. The most common form of faking it is lying on your resume or lying in a job interview. From there, we go to minimizing reality, selective truth telling, which can be extremely dangerous. This is basically where you're actually telling the truth, but you're leaving out certain facts, as was in the case with the Boeing Max aircraft disaster. And then we have just like total outright fraud and deception, and fabrication and gaslighting. So I created this graphic because I think it's helpful for people to understand maybe when they fake it, and where, and perhaps even try and isolate the triggers that cause it.
It's, yeah, when I was reading, I was thrilled to see Adler, and the way you described it, it felt a lot like Aristotle. We're all
Mhm.
for that good, and we strive to that through habit. And I sense that throughout the entire book. Now, faking it is, we know it's bad, and you covered the different levels from just a harmless white lie to fraud like Enron and Elizabeth Holmes
Mhm.
type. Uh, what causes people to fake it, and what causes companies to go down that route?
Yeah. I mean, that's really, it's important to look at that, right? Because once we know what causes it, then we can deal with it and attack it. Usually it's caused by personal insecurity, that somehow you don't measure up, or that what you have to say isn't important enough. Maybe you lack a little bit of confidence, or you could also just be completely overwhelmed by the situation of the moment and don't know what to do. And so you either stick your head in the sand or make something up. Um, the other reason why, companies fake it, and executives fake it, is because dealing and operating from a place of integrity requires that you face reality and be grounded in the truth. And what do we know about the truth? It can be very harsh, and reality can be tough to face. So, in those moments, like when you are looking at having to do a layoff because of the market downturn, I mean, I was in that situation myself. I just wanted to pretend it would all go away and delayed making a decision, or say your product has a flaw and you have to do a recall. That's hard to face. It's easier to shove things under the rug, look the other way, or even blame somebody else, right? And then you're procrastinating and delaying taking action, which can set your business back even further.
In the first pages of your book, you write about starting your company. I mean, even earlier, you noted that.
Mhm.
Um, in that process of starting your own company, how did that feel? Your experience, finding your first customer, and in the process, I'm sure it was a scary process to leave your job and at a young age and be like, I'm going to go for it. I'm making that entrepreneurial jump.
Yeah.
How did you organize risk and not fake it, not fall into that pitfall?
Yeah. Well, I'll add to that my father, who raised me to believe that, you make your own luck in life and that there's no free lunch. When I got my first client, I went to him and said, "Hey, guess what?" And he said, "I don't think you can do it." So, so how do you disarm fear and organize risk? And yes, I was afraid, but I had nothing to lose at that point. I mean, I figured if I didn't get the customer, then I would just go back to my old job. Um, but I did win that customer, and then it was like, oh my God, be careful what you wish for. I I didn't know it at the time, but I just developed this process of basically thinking, okay, I'm afraid of what I don't know. We have a fear of the unknown. So let's conquer the unknown with the known. And I did everything I could to find out as much information as I needed in whatever the situation was at the moment. So I felt a little more confident. I also organized my risk by asking myself, what is the worst thing that could happen here? And how will I recover? So that sort of like was the beginning of the notion of crisis planning, essentially. And I took all the risks, I pulled them apart, and I wrote down what the consequences of each risk were and kind of put together a plan for each one so that I had an arrow in my quiver for whatever would happen. I also played I had a 60 minutes episode with myself. And I asked myself like the toughest questions that I didn't want to answer and came up with a viable response so that I knew I would know what to say in the moment and wouldn't be tempted to fake it. Um, the other thing that I didn't do then, but I did subsequent to that, was to put together a safety net of mentors, of people who I could trust, not board members or advisory board members, but like my own personal network of mentors who would give it to me straight when I needed to get a dose of reality.
So for someone just starting off, that environment is important to have that support.
Yeah. I mean, and if you don't have it, you have to create it because you're going to need it.
Now it's interesting. There's this part in the book where one of your friends or colleagues approaches you and says, "Sabrina, you're the CEO. You could do whatever you want."
Oh God, yeah. Yeah,
And
no.
like, no, I can't. And that really speaks to another topic I want to turn to is the identity
Mhm.
of the CEO. And in pop culture, we have this idea that, and you write in the book, I want to quote, pop culture depicts the CEO as a woman or man with all the answers. In the real world, the CEO is a person who has all the questions and the confidence to ask them. So
Yes.
how are you, how is a CEO or leader different from how it's portrayed in reality versus how it's portrayed in the movies versus in reality? And with that, I want to ask, and I guess a forewarning to anybody who wants to make that jump, the founder's curse.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, so this is really a conversation about humility. And I think humility is a superpower of leadership.
Mhm.
And it is one that most people think would show weakness, to show that you don't have all the answers or that you've even made a mistake. People think in pop culture, you're right, the CEO has to have all the answers and doesn't make any mistakes. But the truth is, if you show, that you don't know something and you just say like, well, that's really interesting, can you tell me more? Or, you know what, that was one of the worst sales pitches ever, I really messed that up, can we get together to talk about it? This shows tremendous strength and confidence. And what it does is it draws people in and it makes them feel comfortable doing the same thing. So you build a company culture that is a learning environment where people feel comfortable innovating and can make mistakes and not feel like, they have to shove it under the rug, or fake it. Um, the founder's curse is the opposite of humility. The founder's curse is basically that you think the product you built or the company you established is perfect. Your baby isn't ugly. And the curse is that you won't listen to any feedback. You won't listen to any advice. And if somebody says, we need to change this thing in this product, like customers don't really like it, they're not using it. And you're like, well, why? Why? It's perfect. Why fix it if it's not broken? That is the founder's curse. And is, it can really hurt your company because you may miss out on opportunities. You may miss a competitive edge, and you can really take your company down with you. And I've seen so many startup CEOs fall into this trap.
What's some advice you would give as kind of a wake up call, like splash of cold water, like you're going down this path? What would you recommend?
And the founder's curse. I mean, again, surrounding yourself with a leadership team of people who will pull you aside and say, like, you're way out over your skis here. You've got to see the reality of the situation, and they'll tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. You must surround yourself with people who will do that for you, not to be argumentative for argument's sake. That's not helpful at all. But um, to really pull you back to center when you need to. Same goes for having mentors around you who will do that. But you have to make a commitment yourself to reality and to staying grounded in your core values. There's been so many stories of founders and CEOs who have fallen prey to the founder's curse to their detriment. Companies have gone down because of that, or they've just been simply fired by their investors. So you just really have to stay grounded in reality, your core values, and surround yourself with people who will give it to you straight.
I want to add to that, the theme of the CEO, kind of build upon that. Depicted in pop culture, CEOs are usually extrovert. They're going around doing deals.
Yeah. Woo!
Yeah, they're never lonely.
Yeah.
They are always on top of. I mean, they're always on top. It's but how did being a CEO, a high performance individual, affect your work and personal relationships, and what does it really mean to be a CEO in
Yeah.
regards to personality types?
Well, I mean, actually, a lot of CEOs are introverts, and um, contrary to what you might think, not all of them went to Harvard Business School either. You know, um, it can be a very lonely position because what happens is the relationships you have with people change. The people, the person, for example, who brings you, you know, your favorite cup of coffee from Starbucks, like, well, what's their motivation? Are they trying to ingratiate themselves with you, to like brown nose you for something? And so you start to be weary of people, or leery, maybe weary too. And you don't really trust everybody, you know, and that can be very isolating. Um, People don't want to have drinks with you after work because you're the boss. And so
Mhm.
that's isolating. And as a CEO, you're the chief decision maker. And so you have to sometimes make very difficult decisions, and people may resent you for them, or worse, like especially if they're laid off and they have to go home to their families at night and tell them that they were let go because of the decision you made. And so that can really do a number on you if you're not prepared for it.
Adding to your points, I like to share a quote with the audience or
Mm.
future listeners. Unattended CEO loneliness can chip away at your confidence and affect your judgment and performance. If you begin doubting yourself, feeling like maybe you've lost your mojo and you're somehow not worthy of your success, then imposter syndrome can knock at your door.
Yep.
And you alluded to it earlier in the conversation. Many people up on top are lonely, and we've
Mm.
had previous speakers. We
Yep.
also had an event on loneliness
Yeah.
in previous events. How do you deal with loneliness? And can you tell us a little bit more about imposter syndrome and how that might creep in there?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, so it builds on itself, right? You're lonely, you feel isolated. There's no other CEO down the hall for you to talk to, because by definition, there's only one of you. And what can happen is you start to feel like you're like in your own bubble, and you doubt yourself, and you lose your confidence and your swagger. And then maybe you start to feel like, I have to act differently and not be true to myself. And you start to fake it. And this thing called imposter syndrome can develop at that stage where the definition is that you have this feeling that you don't deserve the success you've achieved because you just were a person of good fortune or good timing, and that really you're just a fraud waiting to be exposed, when that's not the truth. And that can really do a number on you. It can be very difficult to shake. I actually experienced it myself, didn't even know what it was when I sold my company and was a new executive inside the company that bought my company. And there were all these people around me, and I didn't know what they expected of me, but they all thought I was a celebrity. You know, here she comes, the show will start now. And, you know, and I thought, oh my God. And so I suffered from it too. What you can do to deal with this loneliness and this imposter syndrome is, first of all, you must seek human connection. Connection is absolutely critical for mental wellness. So you have to find peer groups in the industry, either through a third party organization like YPO or Vistage, for example, um, or form your own group of CEOs, or again, that safety net of mentors that hopefully you have. Just hearing other people's stories, it doesn't matter what industry they're in, or if they're a big company CEO or a startup entrepreneur, the problems are all kind of rooted in the same issues. Next, I really do believe in acts of gratitude as being so nurturing and fulfilling to the self. Teaching a class, mentoring others, um, and trying to think about that loneliness as really more of solitude to empower you, and making that mental switch from loneliness, which is sad, to solitude, which can give you the mind space to think of new ideas.
That's something I loved in reading your book is you take this concept where there might be a preconceived notion and you say, hey, let's look at it from a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's topic of loneliness. It's not, oh, I'm alone and I have no one to go to, but it's an opportunity to grow and it's an opportunity to better develop myself.
Mhm.
I want to shift gears again, the more courageous side
Okay.
of being a CEO. You ran, you operated, you grew a business during some of the most turbulent times of our country's economic history. The dot-com boom, the
Yeah.
housing crisis, the Great Recession, the Great Reset. I would prefer mediocre recessions. COVID.
Mhm.
You talk about in military terms, peacetime and wartime.
Mhm.
How did you lead through these turbulent times and through these crises? And what advice would you give future entrepreneurs
Yeah.
and business leaders?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, folks, here's the deal. Like, crises are the norm now, and they're happening with greater frequency. And the worst time to be developing a crisis plan is in a crisis.
Mhm.
So you must develop crisis plans now. And imagine the unimaginable. Who would have thought we would have had a global pandemic, right? Nobody knows when the next big earthquake will come or the next enormous cyber attack that could bring down tremendous businesses and industries. And so you have to put together these plans, right? These are contingency plans, plans for disaster recovery, and business continuity. And you have to think about every scenario that might happen, do a vulnerability assessment, think about your communications protocol, like choose now who's going to be your spokesperson to handle these things, and then your actual plans for how to deal with them. No plan that you put together now is going to be the actual plan that you really use in reality, but it is a foundation from which you can operate. And you must develop these plans in conjunction with your board and your leadership team, and act them out, like literally do a practice run of what you might do. When you do this, it helps you think through certain things that you might actually change in the natural operations of your business that may make your business stronger. Um, and update them, I would say, every 6 months, because things have a way of changing. The other thing I will say, that sometimes the best strategy, it doesn't have to be all thought out to the end. Sometimes that's impossible. Sometimes the best strategy is to just get to tomorrow, because tomorrow things will be different. And then when tomorrow comes, you can assess what reality is and create the strategy, for the next day or week, and create it in real time. And the last point I will offer you all in times of crisis is to over communicate. It is essential when people are afraid and there's fear, uncertainty, and doubt everywhere. They want to hear from their leader. Like, if you're waiting for your plane and it's late, even even if the status is still the same, you just still want to know what's wrong with the plane. Information feels good. And so as a leader, you have to over communicate in times of crisis. Never predict something that you don't know to be true. Never say something that, if you made a mistake, you've got to admit it. Don't hide it. And if the status is the same, then say the status is the same. But that is essential in times of crisis.
You go through numerous examples in your personal experience in the book, and I recommend buy the book, read the book
Mhm.
for more details. You see how structure follows strategy, and Sabrina lays that out. Now, prior to opening up to questions to the audience, I like to one last topic, and this is one that first came to mind when I saw the book. Being in PR, you have a unique perspective
Mm.
on marketing, branding, communications. Most people, when they think about PR, they think about the art of spin.
Yep.
And as you noted in your book, can you tell us why and what deeper perspective public relations provides or provided you in crusading against faking it and creating and maintaining an authentic brand and seeing fakery and in other companies? And why is this so hard to truly operate a business with integrity?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is absolutely essential to understand that PR, the best PR is not about spin. It's a 4-letter word in our business. The best PR is always grounded in the truth, in finding it, understanding it, dealing with it, and finding a path forward. It is about risk assessment and seeing what threats and opportunities are out there. That's why PR has earned a seat in the boardroom now, because it's so strategic to a chief executive. And what I like about PR and what I've learned through my career by making mistakes and watching my clients make mistakes, right? Like the truth always comes out, as I said. You can't put a lipstick on a pig. You can't copy someone else's brand just because you like it. You have to build your own brand authentically to based on your own core values and what you believe and what your vision is and your value proposition. It all ties together. And you can't tell a reporter something that's a lie because they'll figure it out. And when your product doesn't ship on time and you said it would, they're going to call you on it. And then you've ruined your reputation. You know, it's just a small example. But PR really is about getting to the truth. And I think that leadership is very much about the same thing. Great leadership is about making the right decisions, hopefully at the right time, based on reality and the truth. The best leaders do a great job of understanding what the truth is. So it's the intersection of those two things that really are behind why I wrote this book and why it's so important to shake this fake it till you make it ethos and really pay attention to leading instead with integrity, doing things the right way and doing them the hard way.
I love that quote from your book where you talk about painting a Prius red.
Oh yeah.
It's not going to be a Ferrari.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to take a minute just to give our audience an opportunity to write down some questions, and you could message to me, or there's a little Q&A section on the bottom. Looks like we have one currently. Um, what specific advice would you give to a manager or leader who is younger than the staff he or she is overseeing or oversees?
Um, well, it depends on um, what role the individual would be playing, but I guess I would say, um, you know, how can I help you? How can I help you be successful? And you know, and to say like, you know, you got to watch out for these things that may not be what they seem, and we need to be careful with this strategy. Let me help you think this through. And you have to be sort of humble and non-threatening at the same time, because if the person is younger than the rest of your staff, they may be inexperienced and, you know, have an ego to deal with as well. So it has to be handled carefully. But I think an element of humility and helpfulness. Who doesn't want help? And if you offer it enough times, they come around.
Um, Another question: how do you deal with difficult personalities, or when you have to work with them? What advice would you give with difficult, whatever that means?
Yeah. Well, I've worked with a lot of difficult people. Um, you
Unique personalities, I could put it that way. A unique person.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it depends on the situation. You know, I find that having a tough conversation with a difficult person is best done in a neutral location. It's best to be very direct in what you want to say, and less is more. Be very succinct in the points you want to make and state a goal. Like, this is a really hard conversation for me to have with you. I need to share something with you. And where I'd really like to come out of this is XYZ. And even if you don't get there and the person stonewalls you or doesn't listen or talks over you or interrupts you or even worse, walks away, right there. Then you can like use just silence and say, well, I'm so sorry that you feel that way. um I really would like to continue this conversation. Maybe it's better if we have it another time. Sometimes you have to walk away from a difficult person and come back at it again, because even though you left, you still made that impression, and it's going to be in there and they're going to think about it. So there's so many different situations I've dealt with. It's hard to generalize it, but in my book, I do talk about how to handle difficult people in difficult situations. So check that out. It's in chapter 8.
I have another question from Sona. She asks, "Hi Sabrina, thanks for being
Hi.
thanks for being here. What advice would you give to someone whose peers are fake nice? In other words, they are nice to you in your face and generally publicly, but then they whisper other things about you uh,
Yeah,
other things about in someone's ear."
right. Yeah, that is that junior high?
It sounds like it, you know.
Yeah, but it happens all the time in the business world too. And those people are just insecure. They feel like they have to lower someone else to inflate themselves and talk behind your back and triangulate. I mean, hopefully there are other people that you can be friends with and talk to, or not work with those people. um and I always say take the high road, and just not play into it, or just what do they say, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. You want to keep an eye on those people, and don't give them too much. And it's sad, it's unfortunate, but if it's your boss and the person is taking credit for your work, or it's really getting malicious, then you have to take it to the authorities and the channels that are available to you to report these people, and to say that there's a problem in the workplace and you feel uncomfortable. And failing that, you know, there's plenty of companies out there that would be happy to have you. And you can't change how people behave. You can't fix, what is the saying? You can't change a tiger's stripes.
It's funny how we leave high school and middle school, but it's just continues on
Yeah.
forever.
Unfortunately.
We have another question from Elizabeth. She asks, "What advice to you? What ad, what advice do you have when dealing with individuals in your business or life who are faking it, and how that can be identified? How can we protect ourselves from narcissistic type of people?"
Wow, that hits close to home. I had a personal relationship with an individual who exhibited some of those behavioral traits, and it can, they can be pretty cunning, and you may not see it, but you have to really be strong with people that have narcissistic tendencies, um, because if they are truly that way, everything they do is for personal gain at your expense. And I don't know what kind of person this is or what they mean to you, but I would run for the hills. I don't want to get involved with someone like that. And if it is a professional individual, someone who's your boss, again, I would use the channels that are available to you, or find a different job within the organization. Right? You cannot change a person who's wired that way, and you will suffer under that in more ways than you think.
Another question: growing without faking it. How can we grow without faking it and showing an inaccurate picture of who we aspire to be versus who we are?
Yeah. I think everybody's heard, or maybe you guys have heard about building a personal brand. And how can you grow? Like, I think going through the exercise of creating a personal brand can be very helpful in this, in avoiding being fake. Um, before I get into that really quickly, I would suggest as a takeaway that today everybody think about, like, when was the last time you faked it? Like, what did you do? Did you lie on your resume? Did you, like, whatever, whatever it was? And why did you do that? Were you insecure? Were you afraid? Did you feel like you didn't measure up? And then really dial into that feeling that triggered that, and disarm the fear, organize the risk, peel back the onion, ask yourself those tough questions so that you feel like you're more resilient and confident. But getting back to the personal brand exercise, people have asked me a lot about this, like, how do you build a personal brand? And it has to be authentic, right? You can't act like somebody else just because you think they're amazing and you want to be like them. You have to be true to yourself. And if you are, you won't fake it. And here's how you do it. You sit down and you write down, sounds silly, write down who you are and what you stand for. What are your core values? And pull it apart, right? If one of your core values is, um, you know, quality or empathy, how are you empathetic in your everyday life, at home with your family, your kids? And how are you empathetic at work with your coworkers, with your customers? And when were you not empathetic? When did you blow that? When, if you had a do-over, like what would you do over? And then start to, like, actually practice these behaviors and these processes in your personal and your professional life. And you'll catch yourself, be like, wow, I just did that and I wasn't being empathetic in that situation. I'm just making this up, so go with me here. But if you do that enough, right, it becomes your style. It becomes what people know you for. It's how you plan. It's how you deal with problems. It's what people come to you for, and they trust that. So once they trust it, you can't blow it. You can't be inconsistent, right? Because what do we know? A brand is the connection that a person has with a product or a company. It's just like with you. It has to be a consistent experience. So once you build it, you have to protect it and keep it.
It reminds me of Socrates, where wisdom begins with "Know thyself." That's one.
Yes. Well, precisely.
Very beautifully said. We have two more questions, and I believe we will call it a wrap. The first question is: what are your thoughts on leaders who are outwardly "quote unquote" nice, but their ability to recognize their blind spot leaves them in a place feeling as if they are acting authentically when really they aren't leading for
Mm.
performance, productivity, or even developing others?
And so the question is, what do you do with people like that?
What are your thoughts on leaders who are
Yeah.
outwardly nice, but I
Right.
guess I'm assuming fake gurus?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I I know. I've worked with a bunch of those types in Silicon Valley too. What goes around comes around. Sometimes a CEO like that can be successful for a while, but they develop a reputation, and people don't want to work for people like that. And it takes a while to catch up with them, but it does. So you have to make a choice. Do you want to work for somebody like that? Is it tolerable? Are you being compromised yourself, or can you just sort of hang in there a little bit longer? um, if you're close to that person and you're in the leadership circle and you're in a position of influence, then I would certainly have a sit down with that person if he has your trust. um, but that's risky, and I don't know what your situation is. But that's not a recipe for long-term success. And smart investors and other executives will recognize that, and that, thank you, bye bye.
Do not have time for, well, for that.
Yeah.
We have one last question we could take, and that's from Kevin. And he asks, what if you are making it with integrity, being truthful, and making all the right risks? Um, but at the end of the day, your employees or team sees you as a quote unquote bad guy.
Hmm.
How do you cope or resolve that to have them see you as in a positive way?
Well, I don't know, why why the people are seeing you in a bad way, or they think you're the bad guy. Sorry, I don't know why they think that. Um, I think that you you have to pick up on that and understand why that's there. Like, why do they think that? And again, I mean, you may think it's risky, but it would show tremendous strength and open-mindedness if maybe you got the ringleader of whoever this group is or a few of these people together and say like, hey, I just really want to talk to you about something. Like, I feel like this is coming at me. I feel like you guys think this, that, or the other thing. And it's not about you in that conversation, because I did all these things and I'm helping, and it's not about you. It has to be about them, and uncovering why they think that. um, and and then from there you can sort of again understand the truth. What they think is the truth may not be what you think, or maybe there's a misunderstanding, or maybe there's something that everybody has to work on. But I would exercise humility, and I would go to them and say, please tell me why I'm feeling this, and can we work it out so that we can move forward and get some stuff done.
Well, Sabrina, I want to just take this moment to thank you for this enlightening and insightful discussion on leadership and sharing a bit about your book,
Mm.
your personal history, and I want to thank everyone for joining today's
Yeah.
conversation. This is a wonderful book. I took the time to read it. There is, I mean, I read tons of these books, these success books and self-help books and management books and books on ethics. Within 170 so pages, Sabrina jam packs so much information that's not up in this cloud. I mean, it's practical. You could take it and apply it to your business today, from starting it to managing it to building your brand to assessing your own personal development. And you could find Sabrina's book on Amazon,
Mhm.
Barnes and Noble, and pretty
Yeah.
much any major bookstore. And what's cool is I recently learned that there is an audio version
Yes.
of the book. So
Yes.
as the economy starts opening up and we're back to work and we're stuck in traffic,
Mm.
or we're driving from point A to point B, download the book on Audible, um, and make that time count uh,
Yeah.
toward your personal progress. Or you can also check out some of our YouTube events, previous events, and we're going to try to get this one up online soon.
Cool.
Sabrina, thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you all at our next event. And um,
Yeah. Thank you. It was really great to talk with you, Leo. And I can't see any of you guys, but it was great interacting with you in the Q&A, and I hope I was helpful. And please, if you want, feel free to get in touch with me through my book website. It's just sabrinahorn.com, and shoot me an email, and we can stay in touch and connect with me on LinkedIn.
yes, find Sabrina on LinkedIn. I will include links to the bottom of the video when the video comes out.
Cool.
So to the books, to the Amazon website, and to Sabrina's website.
Cool.
So Sabrina, thank you again, and I wish
Thank
everybody a
you.
wonderful Thursday.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Bye. Thank you, Leo.